Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this virtual public hearing. This meeting officially launches the city budget season, and I am pleased to be joined by our mayor, Luke Bronin, and my council colleagues, which I will announce as I see them on the screen. So with us this evening is Councilwoman Shirley Surgeon, Councilman Nick LeBron, Councilman John Gale, Councilman Josh Mishtam, Councilman James Sanchez, Councilwoman Wildelise Bermudez, Councilwoman Marilyn Rossetti, and our majority leader, Councilman Clark. Soon we'll be joined by Treasurer Cloud. We are live on Hartford Public Access through Facebook, channel 96 through Compass, and channel 6032 through Frontier. Tonight, we will have an opportunity to hear a presentation from our mayor on his proposed fiscal year 2022 budget, along with comments from the residents of the city of Hartford. We appreciate the time and dedication of our city departments in helping to develop this year's budget. For members of the public, our departmental hearings will begin next week, and we will make them available by Hartford Public Access Television throughout their mediums, including Facebook, YouTube, and online. For more information, will be available later on this week. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So without further ado, Mayor Luke Bronin, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Council President Rosado, and to all the members of the City Council and Treasurer Cloud, and to all of the residents of the City of Hartford who are watching or participating. It's great to be with you tonight. I wish we were together in person at Buckley, as we usually are, but at least for a few more weeks or months, we'll have to make do with these virtual presentations, and I hope that for some people that might even make participation easier. In a moment, I'll share my screen and go through the traditional presentation of the budget, but just wanted to say a couple things up front. First, to echo the thanks that the Council President just gave to our team here in the city who works hard in putting the budget together. In particular, I want to thank Jen Hockenhull, who is our new Chief Financial Officer, who began right in the midst of this budget process, and her team who worked around the clock to prepare the budget, along with all of our department heads and all of our departments throughout the city who worked hard through that process as well. I'm also going to do something a little bit different tonight, which is in addition to presenting on the city budget, I'm also going to walk through a presentation on the proposed use of federal relief funds that the city will be receiving through the American Rescue Plan. As you all know, at the same time that I submitted the recommended budget for fiscal year 22, I also submitted a recommended multi-year spending plan for those federal relief dollars, and that plan now sits with Council for Council's consideration as well. With that, I'm going to share my screen and begin presentation, if you bear with me for just a minute. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes, Mayor.
Terrific, thank you, Council President. So just to look back to begin, in recent years, as you all know well, we worked hard to move our budget from crisis to stability. We, 5 years ago, faced the most serious fiscal crisis our city's ever faced, and we worked hard to put the city on a path to sustainability. And coming into last year, we had a significant amount of momentum and wind at our backs. This year was a gut punch. It has been painful for our community in so many ways. The cost to our community in lives lost, in lives disrupted, in educations interrupted is beyond measure. And of course, it also presents us with fiscal challenges and also urgent new priorities that we need to address as a city. Our mission is to regain the momentum and the strength that we had and to lift up our community as we try to recover from this difficult year and move our community forward in the year ahead and the years beyond. As I mentioned, we do have some new resources to help us do that in the form of the American Rescue Plan funds. We have to make sure we use those dollars responsibly and well. And I look forward to presenting the proposed spending plan this evening. This recommended budget, not surprisingly, is very similar to past budgets. We developed a multi-year spending plan as part of our fiscal sustainability work, and we have been working hard to stick with that plan. So there are not a lot of significant departures from our prior budgets. We do make some new investments in staffing and services, and I'll talk about those. This budget does not raise taxes. It does not include any new borrowing. As you know, for the last 5 years, we have gone without any borrowing and funded our capital investment with operating dollars or grants. We continue to work with a city workforce that is still about 24% smaller than it was 20 years ago. Obviously, we have to maintain our discipline, but it's important as we make modest investments in services, it's important to keep in mind just how significant the structural changes that we've tried to make in recent years have been. Our long-term sustainability still depends on pursuing growth aggressively, looking for every opportunity to grow our grand list, to help encourage development of properties that will pay taxes or increase taxes paid. And that's all the more urgent in light of the economic uncertainty of the pandemic. We don't yet know all of the ways in which the pandemic will affect us economically, but we do know that it's likely to put some real pressure on commercial property values as commercial tenants reassess their footprint in their buildings. And that's something we need to be very, very conscious of. So we have to be as aggressive as we can in promoting growth and growth of our tax base. As I said, we need to continue to be disciplined when it comes to spending and stick with our long-term plan. We need to continue to fund our capital improvements with operating dollars and grants, not by returning to a reliance on borrowing. And we need to make sure that we use our American Rescue Plan funding to meet immediate and urgent community needs, while at the same time building a foundation for a stronger recovery. So with that introduction, I'll now just highlight a few things about the fiscal 22 recommended budget. The total budget is $583.9 million. That represents approximately 2.58% increase on the 2021 budget. It's worth noting that the 2021 budget itself was actually lower than the fiscal 2020 budget because we knew that we were facing economic uncertainty and we knew that we would likely lose revenue this past year. So even compared with fiscal year 20 and even the years beyond, we remain at a very, very modest rate of growth in our budget. The increases in the revenue come primarily from two sources. First, a projected relatively modest increase in property tax revenue, and also the governor's proposed budget, which includes some additional funding for fiscally distressed municipalities. The increases in expenses come primarily due to contracted wage increases. As you know, we've gone many years at this point with most of our employees having no wage increases. So there are some now contracted for wage increases kicking in, as well as I mentioned, a very modest increase in headcount and important investments in technology needs, particularly our MHIS team, which, as we've seen this past year, does vitally important work helping our community stay connected, helping provide IT service to the city, and also increasingly needs to focus with adequate technology and support on cyber threats that can pose a very significant threat to our city. Here is a chart that summarizes the categories of revenue. I won't walk through every line of this. I will say that this presentation will be available publicly after the fact, so folks are welcome to dig into it in more detail, but I just want to highlight a couple of the lines here that show some more significant change. As I mentioned, there is a projected increase in revenue from property taxes. It's approximately 6.7 million, or about 2.5% over last year. there is the increase in the state funding that's included in the governor's proposed budget, and that is in the intergovernmental revenue category of 10.5 million or 4.1%. And then on the other hand, there is a decrease in some areas, the largest of which is a decrease in interest income. The reason for that is because interest rates are very low right now. And as we used to be able to get some returns on the money that the city had in our bank accounts, we no longer get those returns. So that revenue has fallen. On the expenditure side, there are increases in payroll and benefits as discussed, partly due to those contracted for increases and partly due to the modest increase in staffing in certain departments. There are some increases in non-personnel costs, and particularly the cost of energy and waste disposal that we project for fiscal year 2022. And then, as I mentioned, some important investments in our MHIS budget. That's our Metro Hartford Innovation Systems, our IT department's budget, particularly related to some service support, but especially cybersecurity investment. This chart gives you a general breakdown of our city budget and where the dollars are spent. As you can see, by far the largest category is to payroll. That includes our basic salaries, staffing, and overtime, and that's nearly 40% of our budget, or $118.2 million. Then on top of that, the next two largest categories are pension and cash outs, and benefits and insurance. So essentially that's the cost of our benefit packages, largest categories being pension and health. So combined, those are just over 30%, about 32%, 33% of our city budget. MHIS is broken out here because it is a shared service at just under at about 1.4% or under 2% of the budget. As you can see, our debt service, which primarily reflects the cost of servicing the debt on the ballpark that was bonded for prior to 2016. And then the cost of our library, representing just under 3% of our budget. Other capital investment, this is where we make investments in capital needs using operating dollars. Utilities, which is nearly 10% of our city budget, and then all other expenses amounting to approximately 10% of the budget. So again, as you can see, nearly 3/4 of our city's budget goes to personnel-related expenses, meaning salaries and benefits. Excluding pensions, the cost of benefits is broken down here. And as you can see, the largest amount there is for health insurance. More than $35 million goes to health insurance, just over $6 million or 13.5% to workers' comp costs and other benefits. And then about $4.5 million or 10% to property liability and other types of insurances. Now, to just spotlight a few things about this budget, we continue to maintain our education funding, and it's worth noting that we have maintained the same level of education funding even as the number of enrolled students has declined, which results in a per pupil increase in spending year over year, as we have seen year over year in recent years as well. We continue to prioritize school construction in the capital improvement plan with funding in this year for the Buckley High School renovation project, as well as the Burns Latino Studies Academy project, both very significant school renovation projects. We also add a few more positions, and here's where I highlight those. We have added some new positions at the Department of Public Works. to assist that team. We've added 3 new positions at Health and Human Services. As you know, that department has been asked to do more than ever this past year, and we think it's important to provide some additional support there beyond the support that we're able to provide with the multiple grants that we've been able to secure this year, and that I think we'll continue to be able to secure in the year ahead. And then 3 new positions at the Metro Hartford Innovation Systems, our IT department. I should note here, we, as always, fully fund our pension obligation. That's the actuarially determined employer contribution. That's the amount that we are required to pay on the recommendation of the Pension Commission to fund not just the immediate needs of our pension, our current pension payments, but to continue working to fully fund our pension fund over time. It's really important to stress this last piece, which is this year, we also fund a decrease in the assumed rate of return on pension assets. I want to give a lot of credit to our treasurer, Treasurer Cloud, to the Pension Commission. They have worked in partnership with the city to decrease the assumption of how much return we would get on our pension assets. When we came in, it was it was higher than it should have been. And working together with the treasurer and with the Pension Commission, we have lowered that assumption year over year to ensure that we are presenting the most realistic assumption about what kind of returns our pension assets will generate in the future. Of course, that means we have to fund a little bit more now and in the years ahead to make sure that we are meeting our obligations. But it's important that we do that based on a realistic and responsible number. And this year, that rate of return assumption drops from 7.25% to 6.75%. I'm now going to shift to the American Rescue Plan and the estimate of funding that we received from that, as well as a brief overview of the proposed expenditure plan. Our direct municipal assistance that we're receiving directly from the federal government is $92.5 million. In addition to that, we're anticipating, although we have not gotten the final confirmation of the amount, we're anticipating approximately $24.2 million of the county allocation. Because there are no counties in Connecticut, funds that in other states would have gone to county government, in Connecticut will pass through to cities and towns based on population size. So this is our best estimate of what we'll receive. It's important also to know that the Hartford Public Schools is receiving an additional $127 million from the American Rescue Plan. And there's an additional $5.2 million that we are receiving for combating homelessness and working for housing security. There are, of course, many other sources of grant funding and other buckets of funding in the American Rescue Plan and in other relief acts that have been recently passed. But this is just a highlight of some of the bigger categories of direct financial assistance that we're receiving. Although I won't read through all of this, what you have here is the language from the American Rescue Plan on how these funds can be spent. The bill or the act lays out this language, but the Treasury Department is currently working on guidance that will give us more detail on how we're allowed to spend this money. But we can, of course, take a lot from what's in the legislation itself. And so we have relied on this language in trying to put together a plan that we think and hope will be acceptable, will meet the eligibility requirements that Treasury ultimately puts out. And I want to stress this first part, that the funds are to respond to the public health emergency with respect to COVID-19 or its negative economic impacts, including assistance to households, small businesses, and nonprofits, or aid to impacted industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality. I also want to emphasize that it names down at the bottom, three types of infrastructure investments that are acceptable: water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. The way that we have tried to put this proposal together is to be guided by the following mission. That in allocating our funds, our mission is to help our community recover from a year of profound emotional pain, economic hardship, and social isolation, while at the same time building a foundation for a stronger, healthier, more vibrant, and more resilient city in the years ahead. And we must therefore strike a balance between meeting the urgent needs of the moment and making investments that will last beyond the next few years. The proposed categories of expenditure for these funds are the following: youth services and support, community safety and wellness, arts and culture, business support and activation, housing nonprofit support, economic community development, critical infrastructure, and the replacement of lost revenue. And although I'll go through each of these in some detail, these are the amounts that are proposed to be allocated to each of these areas. $13.9 million for youth services and support, in addition, of course, to the $127 million that will be received directly by the Hartford Public Schools. $11.25 million for community safety and wellness, $15.3 million for business support and activation, $7 million for housing nonprofits, $5.8 million for arts and culture, $47 million for economic and community development, $9.5 million for critical infrastructure, and $6.6 million for revenue replacement. In these areas, what I have proposed to council are each of those categories of expenditure with a statement of the eligible uses for each of those categories, and then the list of intended uses for those funds within each category. So in youth services and support, proposing that we give $2.5 million a year, or $7.5 million of total, to youth engagement grant programs. That is to support organizations that are engaging, supporting our youth as they recover from this pandemic. $1 million a year, or $3 million total, for youth employment initiatives. $500,000 a year for continued growth of the Youth Service Corps, which is an important part of that youth employment ecosystem. $300,000 a year to support citywide youth sports, to make sure that what we're doing this summer with the free citywide athletic recreation program is continued throughout the seasons and over the years to come. And community arts education support as well for $1 million. In community safety and wellness, we place a great emphasis on community safety, including $1.5 million per year on top of what we already spend, just to support our partners in the community, doing work on the ground, helping to intervene and de-escalate, identify possible conflicts, and work directly with individuals, including young people who we know to be involved in or at risk of being involved in gun violence. Mental health and wellness of $1.25 million a year to help ensure that we can do additional direct mental health outreach, as well as some citywide mental health and wellness efforts. Violence reduction coordination. Make sure that we have a small team that is focused on all aspects of violence reduction, not just policing, not just community partners, but looking across all of our efforts to measure what we're doing, its effectiveness, how we can do it better, and make sure that all of our partners are working together hand in hand in a united and coordinated way. $300,000 a year for an expansion of the Reentry Welcome Center. This has been an important initiative that has allowed hundreds of individuals to get support in navigating the difficult challenges of finding housing or a job or education when you're facing the past of a criminal record. We want to be able to expand the Reentry Welcome Center beyond just serving those who are end of sentence. So we've proposed this expansion here, as well as an investment in our health clinic of $300,000 a year. And again, we are making many other expenditures on COVID-related, pandemic-related health expenditures from many other sources of funding. As we know, our businesses, especially our small businesses, have been hit awfully hard this year. And a big part of our recovery is making sure that our small businesses can recover, and that we seize this chance to help small local businesses expand, grow, or help new small businesses and entrepreneurs get started. Proposing an allocation of $4 million for the activation of vacant space, particularly vacant retail space throughout our city. An additional $1 million a year for small business investment incentives. This could be for new businesses or for existing businesses, either to invest in new business that they're setting up in Hartford or to grow their business. A small business revolving loan funds to ensure that for those businesses that are able to make investments but just can't access the private capital at the rate that works for them, that we're able to work with partners to provide loans as well. $2 million in facade grants, because we know that how a business looks on the outside can have a real impact on how the business does, and yet it can be hard sometimes for our businesses to make those investments. Commercial corridor ambassadors. The idea here is to try to make sure that not just the downtown, which has business improvement district ambassadors that you see with those blue and green uniforms out and around the downtown, helping keep it looking attractive, that the same thing can be true on our main corridors, our commercial corridors and avenues. So this funding will allow for a significant expansion of that. And then $500,000 a year for marketing and promotion. It's been a long time since we've run a real marketing campaign for the city. This is a moment when it's not just a nice to have, it's a must have as we work to recover from the disruption of the past year. Housing nonprofit support. Here I will say, we will look with great interest at what the Treasury Department's guidance allows us to do, but we do know that it allows us to provide support to nonprofits. And we know that we have a number of nonprofits that do work in the housing arena, whether it's promoting home ownership, improving the quality of existing housing stock, and those organizations need and deserve support because housing and quality housing and home ownership are also an important part of the health and resiliency of our community. Arts and culture. Here too, arts and culture and the vibrancy they bring have to be a big part of our recovery effort. So the proposal includes $1.7 million a year for programmatic support to make sure that our great cultural festivals that happen over the summer can continue and maybe expand. Make sure things like music and dance on Pratt Street can continue and maybe happen more often. But beyond that, to make sure that we can have musical performances, artistic performances throughout our community on a more regular basis, just bringing some joy back as we recover from this year. And then there's funds set aside specifically for a public art program. We have so many spaces in our community that need to be beautified, that are a perfect opportunity for public art, and we want to partner particularly with local artists to help get that done. The economic and community development, here again, there's lots of questions about what the Treasury Department guidance will allow us to do. But in putting this plan together, we've tried to focus on the fact that we know we're allowed to support nonprofits doing important work in our community, and we assume that we're allowed to make investments that are about growing jobs, creating jobs, or in some way related to health or addressing the economic uncertainty of the pandemic. The intended uses under this category expenditure include two important investments in the library system. As you know, we're soon to open a beautiful new library on Park Street. And if you haven't driven by it recently, you should. It is gorgeous. On Barber Street, we have a library branch that desperately needs to be in a new space. It is a small rented space, much like the library on Park Street was. And we would like to see that new library in the Swift factory. In addition, the Albany Avenue Library branch, which gets some of the greatest use, highest use in the city in non-pandemic times, has been exceeding its capacity quite a lot. And we have the opportunity, we think, to kill two birds with one stone, to help rescue an endangered historic property next to that library, the old Northwest Jones School, to save that building, to renovate it, and to allow the library to use that as an annex. So that's what that first intended investment is. We've all seen the success of Parkville Market and what it's done to bring our own residents together, to bring others into the city, to support a diversity of small businesses. And we want to support the expansion of that market into the planned phase 2. This, like a number of areas here, would be a loan, not a grant, would allow for that loan, when repaid, to then be reinvested in the community again in the future. On Albany and Woodland, we have long wanted to get that vacant corner developed. We want to be able to partner with CRDA to do that, but as importantly, as part of that, we'd like to get our health department out of the rented space that it's in on Coventry Street, put it in a more accessible and central location, and help be a part of getting that development done, which will help contribute meaningfully to the economic vitality of that important corridor. Then another investment in the Parkville area, in commercial development in particular, with a focus on a partnership that we've been building with some companies in the region to focus on business incubation, workforce development, and some light manufacturing. This would allow us to leverage much larger amounts of private investments, and here again would be a loan, not a grant, that when repaid would allow for additional investment in the community. There's funding set aside for additional neighborhood economic growth, recognizing that other projects and priorities will likely come along, and recognizing that we still have much to learn from the Treasury Department's guidance. There's funding set aside for downtown property stabilization and development. We don't know exactly yet how this might be used. We do know that there is potentially a big risk to our commercial properties, which make up a very large part of our city's tax base. If we end up seeing a larger amount of vacancies in those commercial buildings, we may have to do things to try to stabilize that market, including potentially taking some more office space off the market and converting it to residential, so there's not so much vacancy and we can stabilize it. This is important, not just for those buildings, but for our city as a whole, again, because that commercial property tax base is a huge part of our tax base and the revenue we get to provide services throughout the city for everything that we do. We've put aside some funds, as is explicitly allowed in the Act, for hospitality emergency stabilization, should that be necessary to stabilize some of our hotels. Again, we would anticipate that to be loans, not grants, if necessary. And then to ensure that we're able to promote the city, and in particular the convention center, which helps to support a tremendous amount of indirect economic job growth at hotels, at restaurants, elsewhere, to make sure that we are promoting the city as we recover in a systematic and deliberate way. And then finally, investment in the innovation ecosystem work that prior to the pandemic had really begun to bear fruit. We'd had dozens of startups from around the country and the world and locally making Hartford their home, building their businesses, and helping us to grow what could and should be a big part of our job growth in the years ahead. As I mentioned earlier, the Act allows for some investments in particular types of infrastructure. My understanding that the governor intends to focus quite a bit on broadband, and President Biden has called for significant investments in broadband infrastructure nationwide. One of the areas where we know we have a long-standing need to make investments is in our flood control system and our pump stations. This is an important part of our resilience to climate change, our resilience to significant storms. We have to make sure that we are maintaining that core infrastructure. Our pump stations alone probably need $40 to $50 million of investment. This represents only a fraction of that, but at least it allows us to begin to make some progress on that necessary investment. And finally, recognizing that we have lost revenue in a number of places over the last year, and that where we can where we can identify lost revenue, we can also use the funding more flexibly. It allows us to do a few things that we might not otherwise be able to do. First, to begin scaling up our housing inspector team even before we've fully implemented the multi-year rollout of our residential licensing program. That's the residential licensing program we built to try to improve the quality of housing, to improve the tools that our housing inspector team had. That goes into effect in a phased way in the years ahead. These funds will allow us to hire more housing inspectors now, and we hope that the revenue from that program will let us sustain those positions in the years ahead. And engineering and construction management, as well as project management. This is simply because if we want these projects that we've identified and many of the others that we're working on to become reality, not just promises on a page, our departments need more capacity. Otherwise, we will not be able to move things forward as quickly or effectively as we need to. And finally, a capital reserve, in particular, to help us finish some of the streetscape work that is underway, and perhaps some other capital investments as well. That is the summary. I know there was an awful lot there, but I think it's so important for everybody to understand what we've proposed, why we've proposed it, and obviously really looking forward to your comment and to working hand in hand with council in the weeks ahead as we work to finalize both the budget and the American Rescue Plan. But I hope that overall what you see is that we are, number one, staying focused on keeping our city stable and strong, sticking to our plan, not raising taxes, not borrowing more money, making sure that we can deliver our core services and continue to get better at it, and then using those federal relief dollars in a way that meets the urgent needs of our community now in the wake of this pandemic, and also allows us to make some investments that will last long beyond this 3-year period. So, Council President, and to the members of the council, thanks again for the opportunity to present today, and I look forward to hearing from public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that presentation of the proposed 2021-2022 budget along with the American Rescue Plan. And now, like the mayor said, we are now going into the public comment section of this public hearing. And the first person to speak is Heather Lawson. Hi, Heather, if you could unmute yourself. There is a 5-minute limit on a public hearing. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you all for allowing us to join this meeting, council persons and council president and Mayor Brown. Thank you so much. I do believe Patricia Kelly, our CEO, is on the call now. I was acting in her stead, but I believe she's in the room. Is there a way to check to see if she's logged in?
Yes, there is. David will check to see if she's logged in. And she is.
Oh, okay.
So you want to yield time to her, Heather?
I'm not sure if Heather can still hear us, but thank you.
Patricia, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for having us on. As the chairwoman said, we appreciate this time given this opportunity to talk about what our proposals are offering the city of Hartford's youth. As all of you know, we operate equine-assisted psychotherapy. As a matter of fact, we're the only urban center operating equine-assisted therapy for our population in the United States. And it's a very effective modality for our children, particularly our children who have been traumatized. This has been working for the last 30 years or better, and we have multiple success stories regarding treating youth with equine-assisted therapy and psychotherapy. Our proposals are to continue that connectivity, and particularly now since COVID has hit, it has put a tremendous amount of trauma on our youth. We are already seeing the effects of it, the educational Advances, any that were made, have been lost due to the pandemic. And there are quite a bit of unresolved issues with education and community connectivity trauma that is going to be seen in the future. We're prepared for this undertaking to help our children. The three proposals have to do with community enhancement. The first one is to develop a more training space with the organization, and also incorporating a small mini museum inside the training space. The first project has already been invested in by the Department of Community and Economic Development. They have put the first pot of money in to develop this particular space within Keene. We've gone through the city council, we've gone through all of the city departments and gotten approvals from zoning and planning as well. So it is a shovel-ready project. This project will bring in a small meeting space that will give us enough space to add more children to more trainings, and also a small museum that will highlight the people of Hartford, the people of North Hartford, who have contributed tremendously, not only to the city of Hartford, but also through the state of Connecticut, and others as well within the Black and Brown community. This project will help to bring some, I think, pride and dignity and again, connectivity for the youth of Hartford. The second proposal that we have is called the Heroines of Hartford. We have lost a tremendous amount of extremely important people in our community, people like Pat Williams and Elba Schulman. We have lost warriors that have fought for not only the children, but for the city as well. At our facility on Vine Street, the second proposal is to put in a beautiful ranch type fencing, white fencing around the perimeters of the property that will also have portraits of the women who have done tremendous amount of work in North Hartford. These portraits will be done by a renowned artist out of the Maryland area, protected by plexiglass, and the children of the North Hartford area will be able to do information postings about these women, the contributions that they have made. So it's incorporating not only some beautification for the exterior of the facility, but also giving homage to the women who have contributed so well to the community. The third project is, of course, if we're going to do equine assisted psychotherapy, we must have horses, and we do. We have 18 of them. They get old and they need to be replenished. These horses have served kids for most of the last century, or not century, but decade, and they need retirement. And so that means that we need to replenish those horses. So that third proposal is to replenish the horses so that we can continue to serve the kids in the community, as well as to continue to provide equine assisted therapy and psychotherapy. And those are the projects that we are offering up for the city of Hartford.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Patricia Kelly. Next to speak is Deidre Bell.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My name is Deidre Bell. I live in the north end of Hartford, and I was just concerned about with the budgeting and allocating money here and there. I had a few suggestions that I hope could fit into the budget or be squeezed into the budget. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, Deidre. And can you just please state your address for the record? Yes,
my name is Deidre Bell. I live at 71 Mansfield Street, apartment 4 in Hartford, Connecticut, 06112.
Thank you.
Now can I move forward?
Yes, you may.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Bronin, thank you. Also, one of my big things I was hoping that could be fit into the budget was for the children. I would love to see a coordinated effort with Connecticut Transit in the mayor's office. If there's any money available, I would like to see some of these inner city children. They have never seen the ocean. They've seen it on television and they've heard about it. They've never seen or been to the ocean. All they know is concrete and trash and trees in a lot of the communities. And I didn't know if there's money in the budget where we could use to put together something like that for the children, especially here in the North End or anywhere. My other concern was the policing. We all have heard about what's going on all over the world. Okay, all police officers are not shooting people for no reason and beating people up for no reason. That hasn't been my experience here in Connecticut. I've been here over 50 years. I would like to see the police officers get more support. You know, policing is a stressful job. At times, I'm sure more than others. And I would like to see them get more support. To me, I would hate to hear anyone say anything about cutting the police department's funding. Now, I just can't digest that, you know. I just can't see it. Or disbanding the police department. I would like to see more money put in, whether it's body cams for the officers or, what is it, more satellite imaging throughout the city, or whatever it may take to make it a little easier for them. But they do need, I would like to see them get an increase. I think they're doing a wonderful job. I do. I think they're doing a wonderful job, given what they have to deal with every day. I live here, so I can't do anything but commend them. You know, that's for me. My other issue was I would like to see in a budget where the North End is built up. We have to go so far to get to a Ruby Tuesdays. We have to, you know, we got certain areas in Connecticut and around Hartford that has everything. They got a strip, they got everything. The North End doesn't have anything. We just don't have anything above a fast food restaurant. And it would be wonderful if it was more convenient and accessible to the people in the North End. You know, we spend a lot of money in, not we, but because I don't do it, or what they call it, Ubers and Lyfts and all of that. We should be able to have a bus that take us from the North End of Hartford, not 20 miles and 40 miles away, but right here in our own community. You know, I like to see more activity going on in the North End. You know, I didn't know if there's any room in the budget for that, you know, for something like that. We need to build up the North End so people don't have to have a car. People got children. People have children, multiple children, you know, and we have to go all the way to Manchester. You know, I don't know if that's part of this grant or budget, but I would love to see more of that, like the young lady was saying prior. I would love to see more of that in the grant. I really would. And I don't even really want to go into discussing the roads. Public Works, is it called? Is that under Public Works? The sidewalks in the streets? Is that considered Public Works? Can you hear me?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that was a question.
Yes, it is. And Ms. Deidre Bell, I want to be mindful of everyone who's waiting to speak. You have 24 seconds left.
Oh, no, I'm all set. I was just waiting for a response.
Okay, thank you so much. And please feel free to follow up with council via email, okay? Next to speak is Ms. Luz Holmes. You have the floor. Could you please state your address for the record, please?
Hi, my name is Luz Holmes. I am the acting president and chairwoman of the Upper Albany Neighborhood Revitalized Zone. My address is 162 Blue Hills Avenue, Hartford, Connecticut, 06112. Is that good?
Yes, it is. You may continue.
Wonderful. Thank you all for having me on. I just wanted to say hi to the mayor, say hi to all of the council members. It is a privilege to be on this call representing the Upper Albany Neighborhood Revitalized Zone. And so I just wanted to just give a quick preview of some of the work that we've been doing in the North Side as a collaborative. First, I want to give kudos to Ms. Shirley and TJ for their involvement in the collaborative efforts that's been going on the North Side. But just to start off, one of the big items that we've collaborated as a North Side unit, and that includes the Blue Hills NRZ, as well as the Northeast NRZ, including the Upper Albany. We just put in a proposal for the Hartford Foundation of Public Giving faith community grant. And the proposal was basically a collaborative effort between about 5 of the different staple faith-based organizations in our neighborhood. So that included Glory Chapel, Liberty Church, North United Methodist, the Seventh-day Adventist, and another congregation, including the North Side NRZs, where we collaborated to come up with a project called the Northside Faith in Action Collaborative. We just turned in that proposal about a week ago, but it's a very comprehensive and strategic proposal for a collaborative, not only by the faith-based community, but also bringing in the NRZs. And so the mission of this project was so that the Northside Faith in Action Collaborative joins the community outreach arms of the different faith-based organizations with having a specific informational headquarters, a database center at Liberty Christian Center, where anyone that comes in through their doors or calls the contact center headquarters would be directly connected to some of the neighboring resources and services that are available to them. Aside from that, we also was able to create a awesome training series with this proposal to really engage our those that have been disproportionately affected by COVID-19 in different ways. So some of our training series included arts and culture, which we have some professionals, some actual music professors that are volunteering their time, national music professors and professionals that are volunteering their time for this project. We have some professionals that are collaborating on food and nutrition. We also have a big component of employment and entrepreneurship in that proposal. And lastly, we have civic engagement. I think that, you know, as an NRZ, we provide a lot of information, a lot of insight to our residents, not only to our residents, but also our businesses and our entities in our neighborhood. And I truly believe that the NRZs are underutilized. And although it's not a paid position, it's definitely a volunteer position. I believe that there can definitely be a lot more funneled through the NRZs, definitely during this time, being that we're you know, on the ground, speaking to residents, doing monthly walk-ins, speaking to business owners, collaborating with those different entities that are on the ground. I think that if we truly be strategic about utilizing this entity of the NRZs, I think we can do a lot more, in a communication loop will be a lot easier, especially during this time when there's a lot of more resources that are going out to our residents and our community members. Aside from that, on the North Side specifically, along with the collaboration for the faith-based organizations and the NRZs, we've been collaborating with the park, right? Keeney Park. It's an amazing asset in our community and definitely underutilized. And so there's conversation about how we can utilize Keeney Park and engage our community in the activities at that park. So there's been meetings and strategic plannings and workshops that have been going on in the background to talk about how we can connect these assets in our community to our community members, to our residents. And so I just wanted to get on here to just, you know, advocate for not only Upper Albany, but the North Side altogether. We have some amazing assets and locations, as the mayor, you know, spoke about 1240 Albany Avenue, Albany and Woodland. We're talking the old police substation, right? All of these different things that can contribute to the economic development and just the culture of the North Side altogether. I think if we are strategic about really using the entities such as the North Side NRZs to really allocate the funds that can come into us and be strategic and make sure that the projects are sustainable, effective, and efficient.
Ms. Holmes?
I think that would be, yes.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I want to be respectful of everyone.
No
Allow
problem.
them to speak 5
Thank
minutes.
you so
but-
much for my,
Sure,
Yep,
but
thank
please
you.
feel free to email us on console, okay? Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak who is in our chat room? Is there anyone else that would like to speak that's in our chat room? David, can you just verify that there's no one else?
There is no one else that would like to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, David, for all your assistance. I want to thank everyone.
Okay, Council President, but I do have a question. I had my
Oh,
hand
I
raised.
apologize. I didn't see your hand up, Councilwoman. Go ahead.
So my hand was raised shortly after Mrs. Patricia Kelly from Ebony Horsewoman spoke, and it was, I don't know if she's still on though. Are you still on? I don't think so, huh?
Yes, I can get Patricia.
Okay.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation and for providing your feedback and your suggestions. So my question is a follow-up question, and it lends itself to what you were mentioning, Mrs. Kelly, and also to the recommendations of other groups that will be coming to the city as well. So my understanding is that, and I'm very well aware of the great work that your organization has done for a very long time. So we appreciate that work. My question is the following. So seeing as the mayor in the beginning gave an introduction and information about the American Rescue Plan that's going to be coming to the city of Hartford. So my understanding is that it's your intent as Ebony Horsewoman organization to be able to request, officially request funding from the city to be able to utilize some of those funds, seeing as you dedicate a lot of your effort to helping youth. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. So then my follow-up question is to the mayor. Mayor, how would, and I'm asking the question because I'm sure that other groups will see this, it's being recorded, it's going to be posted on Facebook. It's already being posted on Facebook through Hartford Public Access TV. So Mayor, how would organizations and groups like Ebony Horsewoman and others throughout the city of Hartford be able to access these funds? Do they have to go directly to the department that is closest aligned? So like in the case of
Yep.
Ebony Horsewoman, it would be, I guess, I'm assuming, Family Youth Recreation Services, or would it be through another mechanism?
No, that's right, Councilwoman. What I would anticipate is that particularly, so the source of funds that I think would be most appropriate to support an organization like Ms. Kelly's would be the youth engagement grant support that is proposed. And that funding would be administered most likely by the Department of Families, Children, Youth, and Recreation. And of course, what's ultimately in that category of expenditure will depend on council's action. But I would expect that to be administered, that grant program to be administered likely by our department. It is possible that in some areas, I think probably not this one, but in some areas, for example, for some of the business grants, business loans, we might partner with outside entities, outside agencies like a Chamber of Commerce or others to assist with that implementation. But for youth support grants, I would expect that to be administered by our department.
Okay, and so whether it's a nonprofit organization or whether we're referring to our small business community in Hartford, what is one way that they can be on the lookout of when these grant monies will be available to them and what deadlines they need to meet?
Sure. So we'll certainly publicize those opportunities as they come along. That will be, of course, after council takes action on these proposals and the proposal is ultimately adopted, which would not be until the end of May. And we expect to receive the Treasury Department's guidance on May 11th. So it's also important for everybody to understand it may be that we have to make some adjustments to this proposal between now and then, depending on what the guidance is. But assuming the guidance allows us to do what's proposed, then I'd expect our allocation to those general categories to be done by the end of May. And then we'd move into the phase of implementing and working to get those dollars where they make a difference. And that would include, in some cases, setting up those competitive grant programs, in some cases, working to identify partners who can provide a unique service, but that would follow the May adoption of the plan. And we certainly publicize those funding opportunities.
Thank you, Mayor. And just for further clarification, since we are going to have a lot of folks watching this, just to be clear, because it's new federal monies that are available through the American Rescue Plan, this is separate from the already existing and what we're used to, the community block grants, the CDBG.
That's correct.
These are additional funds.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilwoman Bermudez and Mayor Bonin. With that said, I want to thank everyone who was able to provide comments, and thank you to our mayor for his presentation. City Council is committed to getting as much input from residents as possible. So for everyone watching at home, please continue to email us with your feedbacks. The preliminary schedule for next week's departmental hearings is as follows. Be advised, this may be subject to change depending on questions from my colleagues and presentations by departments. We will start the departmental hearings next Monday, May 3rd, where council will be meeting and viewing the presentations from ES&T, Police, Fire, Emergency Services, and Public Works. On Tuesday, May 4th, council will be meeting with Management, Budget and Grants, Finance, CIP, which is the Capital Improvements Plan, and Development Services. Wednesday, May 5th, council will be meeting with Internal Audit, MHIS, the Hartford Public Library, and the Hartford Parking Authority. And on Thursday, May 6th, council will be meeting with HHS, which is Human Health Services, Human Resources, Board of Education, the Department of Families, Children, Youth, and Recreation. A full schedule can be sent if you email the Office of Council President. Residents are encouraged to tune into Hartford Public Access Television, Channel 96 for Comcast, Xfinity, and Channel 6032 for Frontier customers for these hearings. Thank you again to everyone who was able to participate this evening. We look forward to further engaging with everyone throughout this process. Have a great night, and please remember to continue to social distance, wash your hands, and wear your mask. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Night.